All right, well, with that, Mike Helmick's going to come up and introduce not only our speaker, but the guests that I believe are friends of Mike, so I'll let you do the introductions today. Thanks, Mike.
I'm happy to introduce three friends. First is Jeff Smith. Jeff was here, I think, at last meeting, and I told him about our program today, and he wanted to come again, so thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Warren Bingston. Warren is a friend from Founders Ridge. He now lives in Rush City. He is a farrier and a horse trainer, and the only other guy I know, other than yours truly, that wears cowboy boots. Anyway, he's also a poet, so you would enjoy that. Our speaker is Mike Knudsen. Mike and Warren and I know each other from a relationship at Caribou Coffee at France and Old Shakopee Road. Mike grew up in Missouri and Iowa, went to school at Luther College in Decorah, Iowa, was an art major there, and then soon after graduation, he made the decision to enter the ministry. So he went to seminary in South Carolina, then became a pastor with the ELCA, served churches in Wisconsin and Nebraska for about 40 years. But during that time, he kept his art activities going, and I think it probably started more as painting, evolved more into sculpting, but he still does a lot of painting too. So anyway, he's got a great story, and I think with all successful artists, you know, the mechanics of art is one thing. The inspiration that an artist has to have to create a memorable piece of art is the most important part. So please come forward.
Thank you for this opportunity. How's the sound? Can you hear me clearly? Good, good, good. I know him as Texas Mike. I have placed handouts on your table. You're welcome to one. My remarks are gonna follow real closely to the handout. So hopefully the words and the pictures in the handout will clarify how in the world you make a statue. Lunch with Larry. I thought it'd be kind of interesting to share with you how it is that I became a person who made statues. Now, at the time, I had been doing art. I was a cartoonist in a church periodical, so there was a little bit of word out that I was an art person. But I was living in Omaha at the time, and Boys Town, you all have heard of Boys Town, had a statue of a guy carrying his brother. He ain't heavy, he's my brother. And so that made a real impression on me, that statue. And we had a local helping institution. It was called Bethphagy Mission. It's now called Mosaic. They worked with the handicapped folks. And they had this picture that they were using kind of as a logo of a woman kind of helping a boy to walk. And they were leaning in on each other. And I met a sculptor and I started taking sculpture classes, and I thought, you know what? Bethphagy needs a statue, just like Boys Town has. And lo and behold, a guy from Bethphagy invited me to lunch. And I'm like, yeah, man. And so I put a picture of their logo in my pocket. And so I was going to spring it at some time and say, you guys ought to make a statue of this. Well, we're having lunch, and Larry said, he reaches into his coat pocket, he pulls out that picture and says, would you be willing to make a statue for us? Out of the blue.
Great minds think alike.
Yeah, and I pulled mine out, and it was a moment. Anyway, I wanted to share it with you. That's how I got my start, you know. A lucky break, folks, a lucky break. And so I say, I thank you. Now, why make a bronze statue? Well, I don't know what your opinion is, but to me, a bronze statue has kind of a sense of authority, really. I mean, it's metal. You can go knock on them, and I do. I knock on every one I see just to hear that sound. I've got a couple examples there on the page. One is from a Greek back in the old days by Myron. He was a much respected sculptor. And then the one next to it, to the right, is by Umberto Baccione, 1913. Very different, you know. A way to think about that one to the right is he's not trying to sculpt a figure necessarily. He's trying to sculpt the air around a figure. That's kind of cool. I wanted to say just a little bit about the process of collaboration with a patron. I am a person, I'm an artist that is comfortable with working with a patron. I'm not one of those folks that has a dramatic vision and now it's your job to try and understand me. I would much rather work together to craft an image that has meaning for you and certainly meaning for me as well. So the sculptor and the patron, usually some form of institution, find each other. Larry and I found each other over lunch. And so you begin talking. What's your dream? Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to go to all this work and trouble and expense to make a statue? And you hear from the patron side what they're dreaming of. And then you take that in and you process it, and then you start feeding back. Well, I can see this, I can see that. And eventually you get to the point of drawing oftentimes. Here's what I'm seeing, what do you think? And then again, feedback, together searching for what we're going to make. Now, I did bring this. I was talking with a church about making what's called a triptych. In the medieval times, they'd have these on the altar, and you'd open the doors and And so this is the angel coming to the shepherds, and it's very sketchy. You notice it's very sketchy, but it was enough for the church, in this case, to say, yeah, do that. And so I carried it through into a bronze, and it was kind of fun because this is my daughter. This is a Presbyterian minister who was next door. This is my son, and I don't remember who I got for the shepherds. But yeah, so it can go from a sketch straight to a bronze. Now, if you can, I wanted to give you this image of a key and some clay. Have you ever tried to make a copy of a key, or just for fun, pressed a key into clay? Okay, so you understand then, there's the key, the physical object, and then there's this, well, what do you call it? We can call it a negative space, but it's precise, right? It's precise. So if you can kind of, what we're going to do here is we're going to alternate back and forth between something three-dimensional that you can knock on to an empty space precisely the shape of that three-dimensional object. So if you've kind of made a decision with your patron on what you're going to do, you start collecting information. And a lot of times I will have friends or family who are about the size of the person I'm going to do, and I'll start measuring. So I've got my calipers there in the picture, and I'm measuring the distance from the brow to the chin. And so I make all these notes about dimensions. I was asked to make a statue of General George Crook. Omaha has the Crook House that he lived in, and they wanted a statue. So we settled on this photograph that's on that page, and I was going to make my statue based on that. So we go to the next page, and here's where we get into the guts of making a statue. So to make this thing 3D, human size, it's going to have some strength. So start with a skeleton of steel is what I do. Not everybody does it the same way. And then you begin building out from that skeleton of steel with foam, which is light, and you can build up, remove easily. And so you're trying to get close to the final shape, but you're not getting down to the folds and fingers and that sort of thing. Then you start putting on, I'm calling it non-hardening clay, because it takes usually months of modeling. Here's your best tools right there, thumbs. You know, that's after I bought all the really cool tools, you know. I realized, no, it's your thumbs that you do most of that work with. So I just start adding on. And then eventually you come to what is pleasing to your eye. Oh, and I left one thing out. Patrons often come in occasionally to see the progress, so they're not surprised. Wow! You know, you want there to be understanding, and you want both sides to feel protected, which is why at the end of that process of what's it going to look like and all, once it's been settled, then we sign a contract, and the sculptor, in my case, me, is given 30%, roughly a third of the final price at that point, because I've got to go buy a bunch of stuff and that sort of thing. So I've got some protection. They're protected too, because they're not paying the whole thing out there and right off the top. So, okay, then I've got to drive it to the foundry. Now, I've done everything in here, but holy cow, I would rather have people that do this for a living and who are really, really good at every stage that we're about to see. I want the best folks doing that. So I drive it. I have had a relationship with Art Castings of Colorado. I've just been so pleased with their attention to detail and their relations. Okay, so what we're going to do right off, and I'm on page 4 now, is we're going to make molds, or I'm paying them to make molds of every square inch of that sculpture. So they're going to start by putting shims, little thin pieces of metal usually, and sectioning off portions, not the whole sculpture, but a part of it. And then once those shims have isolated an area, first thing that goes on is silicone, kind of a liquidy silicone. And when you're brushing it into all the details, you want to be careful, because if you're leaving air bubbles and stuff like that, it'll be carried through into the bronze. So first silicone, that's for the detail. But then you want the next layer to be plaster, sometimes with fiberglass mixed in, sometimes even with some iron occasionally. This is the mother mold. This is the plaster that holds the silicone in place. Because if your silicone mold is at all off, your bronze is going to be off. So they have what are called keys, where you can kind of lock the silicone into the plaster and it grips it and holds it. Now we go to the next page, and I'm showing you another sculpture. Hopefully you can see those keys in the silicon around the edge of the face. That's where they lock into the plaster mold. But once you've got your silicon locked into your mother mold, you start painting microcrystalline wax. And I had a couple hands that are kind of going around, and that is the microcrystalline wax. It's very good at capturing fine detail. It's a byproduct of the petroleum industry. And I guess way back when, sculptors were getting that stuff just, hey, can I have some of that? Sure. Well, then they realized, now you have to buy it, of course. But you're going to paint, and then sometimes you take a little cup and you pour and slosh it around. You're aiming at 3/16 of an inch. Well, how do you know if you've got that? Hold it up to a light. Right at the point where you can't see light coming through, that's your right thickness. Okay, then the next one down there is, okay, so you're going to take, in many cases, like a front of an arm and a back of an arm, and you're going to bring those wax sections together, and you're going to use your little, what are those called? To heat and to melt together. So it's wax welding. And then you come back with a tool and hide your wax weld. The next one there, add wax channels between the wax to the cup. What you're doing is you are creating the future runways for the bronze to flow into the part that you're sculpting. Okay, so then, and that is shown again on page 6. Now you take the wax, and it's hollow. It may look solid, but it's hollow. It's just 3/16 of an inch. And you dip it down into this slurry, bring it up, let it drip for a little bit, and then take a sifter and dust it with ceramic. Hang it up, let it dry. Repeat. Different foundries do different numbers of layers, but I think 10 to 20. I mean, you're really building up a fireproof shell around your precisely made wax. Then on the bottom of page 6, that's a very simple melting out furnace. A lot of times they're vastly bigger. But you turn that cup, the cup end, aim it down, fire up that furnace, and all that wax gets either dripped out or evaporated. And now you have a hollow space, which is a precise shape of your original clay. So you've had to make the thing over and over. You do it first in clay, then you do it in wax. Then, now you're doing it in the ceramic shell. Okay, everybody loves the next one, page 7, which is pouring in that bronze. And that's the fun. I mean, when you reach that point, this is a blast, just to see that bronze go in there. It hardens amazingly quickly. Couple of minutes, few minutes, and you can pull it out carefully and knock it with maybe a wooden mallet or whatever, and that shell just falls off. It's a beautiful thing. And then you take and maybe blast a sandblaster. You want to get all that shell off. Okay, so in the next images, you've got a pile of sections. So, if you're going to make a full-size person, you're probably going to make 10 to 20 sections, which are then welded back together. And there's artistry at every level, And then, so the welding's going on, and then there at the bottom left of page 7, you turn the thing over to some folks who are really skilled at hiding those welds. And they'll do it with little grinders. They'll do it with files. They'll take little hammers. They'll take like a sandpaper sometimes, put it on the weld, and then tap it with a hammer. What you're trying to do is, it's like camouflage. You're trying to hide the weld. And if you ever want to have some fun and you're up close to a sculpture, try to find the welds. I guarantee you they're there, and you probably won't be able to spot even one of them. Okay, so the chasers, they're called, the metal chasers, which means the ones who work on those welds to hide them, do their thing, and then you take it outside and you blast it with sandblasting, because you want to remove all the oils from the workman's hands. You want to unify. You want the same kind of surface over the whole thing. Usually that's done outside, but it can be done in a place with a vacuum out the particulates. Then comes another highly skilled, and I say that because I've tried and I'm just not as good as the pros. They've got a bottle with acid in one hand. If it's cupric acid, that turns your statue green. And then they've got a torch. And they know by watching how they listen for the sizzle, they watch how long it takes for the metal to evaporate the spray you've just put on, and that tells them what the temperature is. And so they're aiming at a very precise area of temperature in order to have a unified color go over. And then, voila, on their page, what is that, page 8, there's after all these processes have been done, and wax is put on. If it's an indoor, it may end with lacquer. But for outside, probably not lacquer, because actually moisture can go through bronze. And so it comes in through the bottom, and then it starts coming through the skin. And if you have lacquer, then the moisture's trapped under it, and it starts to look foggy. If you're looking at a statue and, oh, wow, it looks kind of foggy there, probably had a lacquer finish. And then on the last page there, page 9, I've just got kind of a potpourri of different works that I've done. I will take a moment with the statue on the top left. I was approached by an assisted living kind of place, and they wanted a statue of an older person. And I knew just the person I was going to ask, Erna Clanton. Erna is the older lady there. She was still teaching youngsters to sing when she was in her 90s. Just an amazing person. She had a stroke, unfortunately, and she could not speak, but she could sing. So she'd say to me, "Pastor Mike, how are you?" You know, it was just, oh, what a lady, what a lady. The young lady is the daughter of the poet laureate of Nebraska, but I'm working on those two together, and that was a blast. Trying to get that young girl to smile was a real trick, but we caught her in a couple photographs. This statue has a poignancy for me in a couple ways. My folks were in assisted living at the time, and I knew there was a little bit of suffering, that I'm getting close to the end of the line. What was my life about? What was it worth? Did I do okay? And so I wanted the statue to say, even in your older years, you have important gifts to give. So I wanted the statue to present that to the folks. And it's been fun to see how the people who live at the place, they have fun with the statue. They'll dress them up, put winter clothes on them. And one time they had a jazz band outdoors next to the statue, and they made it look like the statue was singing with them. Just having fun. But okay, so then what are they singing? Okay, they're out there singing. What are they singing? And we had a tragedy in our family, and a granddaughter died suddenly, unexpectedly. And so I wrote a song, my brother-in-law put it to music, and so they are singing a song to Rosie. So I know that. The people who purchased the statue, I don't know if they know that, but I know what they're singing. They're singing about Rosie. Top, middle, that's a memorial to physicians. And I will say just one word. I do like to explore meaning that is fairly transparent. Again, I'm not trying to be, to hide the meaning. I want it to be kind of obvious. So one day I go to the hospital and I'm standing there looking at the statue. Up walks what looks to be a grandmother and her grandson. And he starts telling her what the statue is about. And he hit it right on the doctor is telling her, and that just made me feel good. Now, maybe that's kind of hokey, and other sculptors would say, oh man, you don't want it to be that obvious. But it meant a lot to me. So my goal was to stop talking at 1:20, and man, oh man, I hit it. So the remainder of the time is yours or ours. Yes, sir.
When they did statues like 200, 300, 400 years ago, was that the same process as you're doing today?
Right. Rodin, I think they used sand casting, which does not have all of these steps, by the way. Sand casting, you make a hard original section, press it into sand that has some, I'm not quite sure what it has in, but then you pull it out, and by gosh, there's the shape. And then you have both the top and then you pour in the bronze. Now, I'm not real clear on how those sections were then welded together. I'm not, but I know the railroads used a powder to join railroad sections together. I know that the Romans, a lot of times, they did it by just really smart hammering. You just hammered your sections together. Just amazing. So, yeah. Yes?
Do you have pieces locally? I see you live locally. Do you have
Yeah.
pieces that are places we can see them?
Short answer is no. I was in Omaha, big enough to have different places that could get into bronze. And I was so lucky. I mean, I had that first lunch with Larry. I did my first sculpture, and all of a sudden, I actually had people coming to me. So almost all of my stuff is in Omaha. I do have the Albert Schweitzer there, is down in the University of Alabama, because at the time I had a agent who was a marvelous Southern belle. The bottom right, that's at Luther College in Decorah, Iowa. And top right is just a family that was looking for their patron saint. Yes, sir.
The two-part, start to finish on the general piece, and then do you have like a maker's mark that you put on each piece that you create?
I just put Knudsen.
You just signed?
Yeah, just right in the clay. I've thought about having a stamp, it'd be kind of cool too, but so far I'm just doing signing it in there. And if it's an addition, that's the nice thing about having the molds, is you can then make more than one. Like the moose, there's a moose. Yeah, I thank you. Yes, thank you for knocking on it. I think I've sold about 7 of those, and they're kind of spread around. Somebody else had a question. Yes.
How long does it take after you've made the sculpture for the rest of the process of the mold?
Yeah, now that has a lot to do with how busy Art Castings of Colorado is. When I was doing the majority of my stuff, it was 8 months because you were in line, you know, and then they started on you, okay, but a lot of that 8 months is just waiting for them to start. Maybe it's a little quicker now. I'm not quite sure. There was another, yes.
Well, my question was similar, like the 2 generations time frame from start. Once somebody commissioned you to having a final product, what was that duration?
Yeah, at the time I had a wonderful thing called a sabbatical. I had been at the church long enough that they gave me 3 months to kind of use however I wished, and so I was able to really get down on the statue. So I had a couple months of concentrated work, and then another couple months probably of catch as catch can. And I was a full-time pastor, so I'd be down at the studio at 3 in the morning, you know, trying to knock that thing out, but it ended up okay. So, but the foundry, again, 8 months, you know, and sometimes the patrons get a little, you know. Yes.
Excuse me. Thanks for your presentation. In dentistry, we kind of use a similar process.
Yes, you do.
And my question, we've seen changes over time.
Yes.
With new technologies.
Yes.
And now AI. How is that going to affect what you do?
How is that going to? Well, I think one place where it really comes into play with sculptors who do this kind of thing is 3D printing. So you make your first model this big, and then you tell the machine, make it 7 feet tall. And so it carves out probably in a foam or something. So all of that work I'm used to doing just by hand, you know. So that can really speed up. And I don't know it, but I assume sculptors are using the handheld 3D scans. Is that cheating? Probably. But then what that takes away is your own personality, you know. Yeah. So, I don't know. Yes?
Question. So is the last time you touch it after you've made it into the non-hardening clay? And you have to have it just absolutely as precise as it's going to be at that level, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And then they better not screw up any of the other layers.
Right. And so I would, and it, you know, time and expense, but I would drive out to Loveland a couple times while these things were in production, and I did catch one major boo-boo that they had made. They had the general leaning so far back in his chair that it was like a recliner, and I'm like, whoa! But they're so good. They took they chopped it up, re-welded it the same day I was there. Just amazing. Hit all the welds, everything, one day.
And this is called lost wax. This is the lost wax method.
Yes, I think everything I've shown you is lost wax, which the Greeks did, which the Romans did. They just didn't have silica. You know, they used like a fine plaster maybe. Yeah.
One more?
Yes?
Where Where is the general on display? Is that in Nebraska somewhere?
That is in Nebraska at the Crook House, as it's called, in North Omaha.
And he's life size.
Oh, yeah, he's life-size. And that one also, they have fun dressing him up for winter, etc.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank
That's
you.
fascinating.